There we go. All right. Yes, it's always nice when technology works well, huh? So, similar to David, I actually have a theme of like books were really important to my life. Believe it or not, sports, but I didn't play quite like he did, but I played 4 sports. And it taught me a lot of things about teamwork and leadership as well. I was asked to tell you about my career, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do. And I think it's really sort of hard at times to talk about the things we do at NASA and some of the things in the Department of Defense without pictures, so I often use pictures. What you see right there is the coin that I developed. You know, if you've ever know people that are in the military, they coin press with a coin that's symbolic of the things they do. And so that's the one I created for myself. Um, as you probably heard, I was the former Assistant Secretary of Defense for Science and Technology, so I was the first woman of color, actually the first person to ever sit in that position. But there was a bunch of things that I did prior, and I had these career decisions I needed to make. Would I be an engineer, professor, a manager, and a mom? And I say, you do it all, girl. I say, STEM girl magic. But similar to some of the things that we hear about marginalized communities and the places that we come from are often not typical for a rocket scientist. I was this little girl that grew up in Brooklyn, New York, Bedford-Stuyvesant in the projects, you know, which is low-income housing, tough neighborhood. But I had a mom, you can see centered there with my youngest sister, who became a medical doctor. So we've got 2 doctors in the family. And one of the things that I learned early from my mom is to be very interested in understanding of the cultural things that happened. If you look at her and my dad in that picture, they're in their African dashikis, and so I learned all about Black history all through my life, and I think it was one of those things that really helped to inspire me, but also to make me concrete in knowing that I could be capable of the things that my ancestors did. I think when you want to learn about what a person does at NASA, people go, what do you do at NASA? Well, you know, just to say briefly, I was well prepared because I went to school at MIT in Aeroastro, course 16. I was the first Cambridge resident. So not only was I lived in Brooklyn, but I moved to with my grandparents to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I became the first Cambridge African-American woman to graduate from MIT. And I did it in a difficult, challenging environment. And then came on to Howard University. I graduated the year of the first shuttle disaster. And so I decided I didn't want to work for defense, which was what our jobs were, and I went back to school and grad school. And while I was in grad school, I was walking through the halls and saw this NASA representative. I did my first internship at NASA Langley, which is where the Hidden Figures movie was, and so some of those women were my mentors. But I ended up 31 years working for the NASA, for the Goddard Space Flight Center and for headquarters. And so I always like this picture because people go, what do people do at NASA, right? They instantly, my grandparents would say, she's an astronaut. And I go, no, Grandma, I'm an aerospace engineer. And then, of course, my friends would think of other things, virtual, and my daughter for the long time associated with Star Wars, right? And then many people go, well, why are we throwing money away in space, burning money, right? And then, of course, I do tell people, yep, you'll see, I do have friends that are astronauts. Yep, there's my friend Leland. And what we actually do, we spend a lot of time talking to people, being leaders, and in meetings and building systems. My last role was really about bringing new business and working and collaborating across all of the science disciplines for Goddard. And you can see there astrophysics, earth science, human exploration, planetary, and heliophysics. And in doing that, as an engineer and scientist, we bring and enable the science that you see every day, the things that you learn that NASA does, and it's more than just the astronauts. It's earth science, it's looking out with the James Webb Space Telescope. Of course, we've got one of our pioneers here that supported it. And I was so fortunate. I got to work with Nobel laureates, and so I was respected in that environment. That's Dr. John Mather, who is the principal investigator for Hubble. You can see me there with the Hubble Space Telescope mirrors behind me. I was for a time with the James Webb's near-infrared spectrometer detector manager. And there's my daughter, who I learned to be bold. I taught her to be bold, and she asked him a question, Dr. Mather. The other person is Saul Perlmutter, who I would partner with on some other astrophysics missions. I also had the opportunity to create a CubeSat development, and I've got a patent. So this was the launching of that CubeSat. I don't think the movie, maybe I need to click on it. Let's see if that's going to work. No. There you go. And so CubeSats are these little miniature, and believe it or not, right here in Colorado, you have a leading institution, University of Colorado, that does CubeSat developments with its students. But these small miniature CubeSats are very unique in the sense that they can provide us with science in a very short time frame and for a lot less than we see, like $10 billion for James Webb, right? These often are like $5 million missions. But the biggest contribution I've made in life, I believe, is giving back to youth. And so every year I would have teams of individuals, and these are my last interns at NASA. As you can see, they represent sort of like the cultural base that we have in the United States. They're from the Midwest, they're from the West Coast, they're from the East Coast, they're from Iowa, Indiana. I mean, they're all over. And as you can see, African American, Asian, Caucasian, I mean, just a mixture of students, and they loved working together. And so these were my last class of students, and I think that that's the legacy that I like to people to represent. I start really young. So first Lego is the theme that I often do robotics with kids. I run a nonprofit organization called the Dynamic Mathematical Visionaries, National Society of Black Engineers. And these were some of my initial kids. That's my daughter. And they ended up being national champions. My girls won 2 years in a row during COVID, which was unheard of. So they became national champions for first Lego. They ended up competing in Greece, virtually, of course, because it was during COVID. But these kids are doing things. And so this is just another way that I give back. And then with my 31 and a half year, I got this White House call, right? And I was like, why? Why me? And they were like, Joe needs you. So they were pulling at the heartstrings because I love my job at NASA. But yeah, he said, I need you, and I became the Senate confirmed person for that position I mentioned, Assistant Secretary of Defense. And believe me, I answered all of the senators' questions. I was not rude. I was extremely respectful. I trained for 4 months. If you look at the time frame, the call came out in September. I didn't do a confirmation hearing until January, and I took it very, very seriously. I really, really wanted to make sure I could be the best that I could be, and I represented so many people in doing so. Moving into that position is really about, many people think that you're in the military when you're in the Pentagon, but there's so many civilians, like 40% of that workforce that we have at our laboratories and other places are civilians. So I always remind students that, being part of our defense is not just about being in the armed force services, and we're going to hear in a minute about that, but it's also about creating the technology and creating policies and things like that to help protect. And as you can see, there's a picture of them doing rescue. So the other picture is at a university, not just at our department labs. We collaborate all across the system. And this has a whole list of things, but girlfriend was in charge of a $2 billion portfolio. Yep, 700 employees, all working towards enhancing and growing the ecosystem for the U.S. and our allied partners. I sat on international community committees, talked about policy for quantum science, hypersonics, biotechnology. I actually was the chair for the National Bioeconomic Board, which was to grow the bioeconomic capabilities in this country. Like, where are we going to do things? We keep talking about AI, but bioeconomics is growing silently beside it. And those offer us opportunities to do things for the future. And then one of my favorites was the K through 12 programs, and then outreach and smart scholars. So for students that are looking for scholarship opportunities, the Department of Defense offers the smart scholarships. It's a full ride with a stipend They set you up for an internship at the laboratory, and then whatever amount of years, usually 3 years, you owe them those 3 years, so you automatically come out with a job in the laboratory. It's an opportunity to work on cutting-edge technology. In addition, I also helped to grow our manufacturing capabilities, so 9 manufacturing innovation hubs, and then a plethora of other opportunities with federally funded research centers and our university-affiliated research centers. My favorite was working with the S&T workforce, and I really felt when I stepped in the door that people there at the Department of Defense were overworked. They're underpaid in a sense because they're on government salaries, and people think government employees make a lot, but no, they're usually a bit less than private industry. And I really wanted them to work together. So I really talked about teaming and working together in cross collaboration. I had the wonderful opportunity to serve under 2 very influential leaders, and they taught me so much about sort of respect and collaboration, so much sort of differently from what we're seeing now, and how we work together to protect the things that we hold near and dear to our heart. So this is a short video. Oh, I see it didn't move that. Let's see if we can pause it for 1 second so you can see it. And it's not stopping. Oh well. Let's see if I can move it real quick. Yeah. I just want you guys to see the great technology they're doing. And it's not. I can't find my mouse. There it goes. All right. Let's just go to this. So one thing for this community that I created was a hub that was to bring innovators together. It's called DLD SciTech Connect. Go online and join. And if you have people that you want to collaborate across the ecosystem, then there are opportunities to connect. And then all of the little icons that you see will give you information about the labs and the way that you can work together. I often say when diverse ideas collide, they spark innovation. And there is so much diversity in here. I think there are times when we are in different fields, but there are intersectional moments when you can work with another person outside of your discipline, outside of your communities. I also say there's space for everyone, meaning that anyone can collaborate and contribute to space. And as we look forward to the Artemis missions, I think it was mentioned earlier in the previous section about Victor Glover. He attended a university here, so you've got someone right from this community that will be participating in the future missions. And then, of course, we're thinking about our journey to Mars for the future. I'll leave with my often say, aim high, shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll still be amongst the stars. But I also believe in peace. Positive energy activates continuous elevation. And I also say, live long and prosper.